we all know, the past 18 months has been interesting for all of us. Some good, some bad. And the same is true what we hear for nonprofits. It's interesting because when we talk about the health of our nonprofits, it depends on somewhat the industry, the sector of nonprofits we're talking about, because some of the nonprofits say they had their best year ever in 2020 and so far in 2021. But then there's ones, whether it be the performing arts or whether it be some in education, some in healthcare, who aren't saying that. So we could talk about a lot of different areas of the nonprofit, anything from the board to the staff to marketing to fundraising to donors. But for today, what I'd like to focus on is what is making the most difference over the past year and a half that's key for nonprofits who are healthy and those who aren't healthy. And so I knew that the best person to talk about this was one of the premier fundraisers out there. So I'll introduce Marcy in just a second, but some of you all know me. I'm Robin Thompson. I'm a nonprofit consultant. I'm based here in Vail, Colorado. And I've done about every job there is in a nonprofit, from database to development director, vice president, executive director. And since I didn't have anything else to do during COVID, I published a book, Putting the Fun in Fundraising, The Secrets to Raising More Money Faster and Easier. And so when the lockdown happened, I wanted to do something to help. So I spent about 11 weeks interviewing people who were nonprofit professionals. And so part of that was the nonprofit learning series that we've been doing now for about 4 years. So Marcy and I met through the National Speakers Association, and we became fast friends because we had a lot in common with the nonprofit world. And the founder of the National Speakers Association's name's Cabot Robert, and he always said the pie's big enough. And so what Marcy and I realized was that although we might not think exactly alike about things, and we'll go through some of that today because it's kind of fun to get two different viewpoints on something. But what we knew was that the end result of what we were looking for when we worked with nonprofits was the same. We wanted to help them be successful and raise money. And so, we're not talking about competition. We're talking about how can we complement each other, just like nonprofits when they collaborate. So let me tell you a little bit about Marcy. She has over 20 years of firsthand fundraising experience at the University of Wisconsin Foundation, where she and her team raised millions of dollars. She led 3 successful comprehensive campaigns, including the $1.8 billion. Oh, look, good job.
Oh, Badger.
The $1.8 billion Create the Future campaign. Over 7,000 development professionals have experienced her program, Making an Artful Ask. So a lot of you all know her through the Association of Fundraising Professionals. I know I've had emails from people who say, "Oh, I can't believe that you have Marcy Heim coming on today," because I just love it when she speaks at AFP. She's also spoken at CASE. She's been awarded the Crystal Apple Award for the highest faculty rating. She also has been featured at AHP.
The Crystal Apple is a crystal apple.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, this is part of the fun of being, I know you're trying to be all professional here, Robin, but you know me. This is fun of being in my home office. Like right here sits my crystal apple. It's actually a crystal apple. It's a very cool thing.
And so those of you, if you don't have the speaker view highlighted on your, be sure you do, because then you can see all Marcy's cool stuff when she shows it off. Her books, Empowering Your Board to Serve as Effective Development Ambassadors and Invest in Joy, are used by staff and board members, and she's going to find one, I just know it. Her workshop, More Major Gifts, provides an in-depth experience working with individual givers. So with that, let me welcome Marcy Heim. We are so fortunate to have you here today.
Robin, it is fun. And I need all of you to know, those of you that do know me know that I am completely 100% transparent. And if Robin were not Robin, I would not have said yes to today. But I love this woman because the second we're done, 50 people are coming to my house for our family reunion. So right now, I'm really going to work hard to focus on answering all her questions. But I'm thinking, did I put that garbage bin back? And did I rinse out the, you know what my head's doing right now? And are people going to walk in and see my son's sneakers? Is that the first thing they're going to see when they walk in the door? Did he take them upstairs? But now, Robin, I'm 100% with you and all of you great folks who are in our honorable and noble profession.
Thank you so, so much for being willing to be here. And I think that's why we had so many people sign up, because they know, as far as being a premier fundraiser, we have her in our midst today. So be sure and put your questions in the question box and the chat box, and then we will also open it up for questions here later. But so, Marcy, like you, when I read something or I see a webinar, if it was done before March 13th, 2020, I say, so did that work in the last year and a half, or was that just something they did before? So, one of the things during the lockdown was the nonprofits were asking, should we be asking for money? And is it different if you're a social service organization rather than an arts or environment? And you, during this time, you didn't miss a beat. You just kept going. And so tell us the results you saw and what you did. How were you able to just keep going through it and keep raising money?
Okay. Uh, Robin, one of the biggest differences in everything I do in raising dollars is well, 85%, probably more of our success is right here. It's all in our heads and it's our thinking. It's how we think about the work we're doing. It's how we go about our days and the thoughts that we have. And if we wring our hands and say, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? There's this pandemic. Nobody's going to want to give us money. Oh my heavens, nobody even wants to talk to me now. That's part of what stops you, gets in your way, and slows you down. The second part of it is that it has to probably be, I mean, I didn't live through some of the great wars, but it has to probably be one of the most fearful times for our country. And fear is crippling, and fear makes us contract. It truly, physiologically, it makes us shrink down and be in, and leads to poor health, and leads to, muscle aches, leads to fear of making a decision. It literally shuts you down. And so probably the main thing that I really did working with my clients is we talked about what were they fearful of? And then what is truth in what they're fearful of? What is the truth in that? So they're afraid that none of their donors want to hear from them. Well, is that truth? And how do we test if that's truth? Pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I'm just checking in on you. How is it going? This thing is pretty scary. What do you think? And overwhelmingly, people were delighted to hear from them. So you're right. We didn't stop. We also, one thing that hasn't changed, if there's anybody on here that had a crystal ball before last March and could see the future, I'd love to know who you are, because you should be in a different business. But none of us had a crystal ball then, and none of us have a crystal ball now. And we've never had a crystal ball. And so you either let your circumstances run your life and you get out of bed in the morning and say, well, gee, I wonder what's going to happen at the office today, or I wonder what somebody's going to tell me to do today. Or you get out of bed in the morning and you say, I create my life, and you direct those circumstances. So working with me is we grab a hold of those circumstances. And if they're not the ones that we need or want, we figure out how are we going to make those circumstances. Probably, and I know that you brought up, Robin, and it's something I hear a lot of, but you don't understand. My mission doesn't have puppies and kittens that are so cute to use. In fact, and what is his name? Boulay has a presentation that he talks about some heavy stuff, and all the while behind him are running these pictures of puppies and kittens. And when I first looked at it, I thought, this has nothing to do with what he's talking about. So I said to him, what is up with the puppies and kittens? He said, don't they make you feel happy and good? And I said, well, yeah. Well, that's why they're up there. Okay. So what he was doing was modifying the circumstance so that we all had a different level of comfort. Yes, it's different in some aspects, depending on your donor base. So if you are a school and you have alumni, that's a little bit different relationship than if you're a senior center and you're relating with people who come and, spend some of their last years there, and then they don't have maybe the same kind of lifelong connections you'd have to, say, a university or a school, but they're still connected to you. And one of my dear friends is Penelope Burke. And Penelope, I'm sure many of you know, we hit the speaking circuit together, and she has done so much research, and research where she says to donors, "Why do you give? Why do you give?" And the number one answer, my friends, has not changed in all the years I've been in this business. And Robin will say exactly the same thing. It's a point we agree on. And it didn't change last year, and it's still the same now. They believe in your mission and they want to make a difference. And that didn't change through all of this. So that's the premise we started from. Now, interestingly enough, the second reason that people said they give, the second reason, now listen up, friends, the second reason, they were asked. So there's no little bird that flies around and says, you could give the civic center some money. You could give the museum. There's no little bird that does that. That is our role, to let them know how they can help. So yes, we had marvelously successful years last year across all sectors. We focused on the value and the belief that we shared in the mission, and we focused on continuing to ask for their support. So those would be the two reasons, Robin, why last year was remarkable for the folks that I have the privilege to work with.
And so, Marcy, are you seeing the same thing now? Because one of the things that I keep hearing is that um, as the world is opening up, that it's tougher and tougher to get in contact with donors because they're jetting here and they're doing this and they're doing that. And so what are you telling people? I mean, like, okay, so you can't get them on the phone and they won't answer an email. And so, what are you telling them now?
Well, Robin, what I'm telling them now is, guess what? Talking to you about the nonprofit that you love is not their number one priority right now. They're getting to see grandkids they haven't seen for a year and a half. They're getting to get out and do some things that they've always loved and wanted to do. And I'm just fine with that. I like the phrase um, gracious persistence. Gracious persistence. You might want to write that down. Gracious persistence. It means that you persist, but you're gracious about it. I know that right now you're really excited about being out there again. Hope that we can get together at some point to continue the conversation that we have about the Humane Society. And that's where we have to come back to another great truth about fundraising. It is not your timeline, folks, that matters. It is the donor's timeline. Always the donor's timeline. Just because you have a capital campaign or you have a deadline to meet or you've set up your quarterly goals to raise so much, that's fine. But that's not the donor's issue. That's yours. So it's on their timeline, not your timeline. So right now, if you're having a little more trouble connecting with people, celebrate the fact that they're able to be out and doing things that are important and lifting them up and bringing them joy. And just stay in touch and stay focused on what you want to talk to them about, and it will happen.
And so what I hear you saying is what I say, doing a checkup from the neck up. So a lot of what you are trying to help fundraisers do is say, okay, so do I have some old tapes playing about, I shouldn't be asking, some old money tapes. Oh, money doesn't grow on trees. And so that's a big piece of what you try to help fundraisers work through is how do we get past that, and then how do we contact our donors?
Sure. We all have this unfortunately, most of the time, fairly negative. Chain of thoughts that goes through our heads, and half of the time we don't even realize we're thinking them. So one of the important things to do is to really check in and say what it is I'm thinking about. What I find interesting is in a lot of my programs I ask people to fill in just those blanks, Robin, because they're not even aware that we formulate, and I'm jumping here, we formulate all of our beliefs. Most scientists will say, most psychologists will say, by the time we're 6 years old. So a lot of our beliefs and our fears and our concerns and our biases, all of that stuff is programmed real little. And this is not a bash on your parents session at all. But think about those first 6 years. You're around your parents a lot. Maybe you're faith-based. Whatever community you grew up in. So a lot of you has formed them. And we kind of spend the rest of our lives needing to question some of those things and say, is this, I come back to, is this truth? Is this really true? So when I ask the question to fill in the blanks, and one of them is money doesn't grow on, and no matter what the age, that's what astounds me, Robin, is that my 20-year-olds in the crowd, and I do an ask talk with high school kids, so they're what 14, 15, 16. They can all say truths, right? And then I'll say, money is the root of all, and they all go evil. How do these kids know that? And this is the one though that hurts my heart so much. I'll say, okay, fill this one in. Blank rich. I'm just curious. Chat in what comes up for you all on the call. Blank rich.
No answers yet.
Well, it takes a little bit for it
There
to
we
come
go.
through.
Filthy, sad, but not true.
Filthy.
Life's rich, filthy.
I'm seeing a couple of filthy. So by and large, when we're live and in the group, what I see predominantly is filthy rich. And that is a mindset that's really troubling in the development profession because it, oh, risk. Gotcha. Sorry. Well, I'm trying to not be too close and too loud. So I'm really stepping back here from my mic. Sorry about that.
And
Yes,
Colleen
risk.
wishes she was.
But there's a negative connotation associated with wealth, and that's a real problem for us. There's almost a, I say that it's almost like we're resentful. We walk into someone's home and we say, "Gosh, I could never have this," or, and then we start justifying that. We start becoming kind of victims because maybe we don't have that kind of wealth, and we're a little jealous of that kind of wealth. So then we start saying things like, "Well, I may not be rich, but I'm spiritual," or "I may not be rich, but I'm liked," and 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 we've got to get back to that reality that you can be spiritual, liked, giving, loving, faith filled, compassionate, empathetic, kind, considerate, and very, very rich, right? So I'm sure if I did said a show of hands, how many of you know really rich people who are just wonderful, amazing, wonderful, great people? Yeah. How many of you know rich people who are jerks? You bet, they're out there. How many you know poor people who are wonderful, kind, living, giving, loving people? Poor people, yeah, sure. How many of you know poor people who are jerks? Yeah, sure. So it's not the money, but we like to associate the money with that, and that's a, and that's a real problem because when we resent something, we can't bring it to us. They say that resentment's like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. Doesn't work that way. So we have to really get clear in our heads some of this money stuff that we have going on. An example, I'll pick on Terry because she's looking at me and I love you for that, Terry. So, Terry, congratulations on your new job. What will your salary be? Probably not. Is that an uncomfortable question?
It is.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
right. Um, uh, um, Jack, that's a great shirt you have. What did that set you back? How much did that cost? Probably not.
Whatever my wife paid for it.
There you go. Great answer. And so we're not accustomed to talking about money. So sometimes for all of us, a good place to start with folks that we have around us is to say, uh, if they say, well, especially maybe you're on a phone call making an appointment and they say, is this about money? And a lot of times I'll say, well, not yet, because I'm not sure that investing in us is something that will bring you joy or is a fit for you. But eventually, yeah, I'd like to talk to you about how your support could make a difference for us. And it is about money, and it's awkward talking about money, isn't it?
Mm.
And I just hit that cow in the room head on.
And so, as you're talking about that, it's, of course, it's too late for us to go back and do what we could have, should have, would have, whatever. So, what do we do moving forward? So, giving that, okay, so I've got some money issues that I need to work through. And I didn't really call my donors during this last year and a half because I didn't know, or I called them but never asked for money. So, how do we move forward?
I believe that when we are authentic and honest, that right now there's still a lot of fear out there.
Mm.
Um, Consistency and some of the traditional things we used to do are comforting for people. That doesn't mean we don't use the last remarkable months we've been through as an opportunity to reevaluate and look at all the things we've done and do them differently and say, do we want to stay the same? I'm not advocating that at all. It's a marvelous time to throw out galas that should have been buried 10 years ago. But how we move forward now. So Robin, be my donor. Hey,
Okay.
Robin, hi, this is Marcy. How are
Hi,
you doing?
Marcy.
I wish they all were you. Gosh, Robin. It's been a while since we've had a chance to check up or connect, and I hope everything is going all right for you and your family.
Yeah, we're healthy, which is it's great given what we've been through in the last year and a half.
Exactly. And this is a little awkward for me because I feel like it has been a long time since you've heard about what we're doing at XYZ. Would you be would you consider setting up either a Zoom call if you're not comfortable, getting out yet, or a chance for us to sit down for coffee to just kind of reconnect? Because I've missed you. I've missed you. I've missed having a chance to visit with you. Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
And that's probably not the best example, but a conversation around that. You kind of acknowledge that it's been a while and you want to reconnect and see folks again. Um, and I think that the other part of the fear that comes into the work we do is, what if they say no? What if they say, you know what, I I really like your organization and all of that, but now is just now, no, I just really don't have the time right now, or it's just not really something I want to do. Well, I appreciate you letting me know that, and I'll stay in touch. I promise to give you a call again, well, after the hectic summer is over. So look for a call from me sometime in September. So I always set up the next step. I always set up what I'm going to do with them. Then when I call in September, I say, "Hey Jack, this is Marcy. Remember I promised to call back in September. Is this a better time?" Um,
Wow, that's gold what you just said, because I think so many times that we don't set up that next step, and then that fear sets in again, that last time they talked to me, but what if this time they see their caller ID and say, you don't want to talk to her, or see the email come through. So if we set that up and you remind them that they agreed to have you call in September. So I like that, as we're trying to get through this summer of everybody seeing their kids and family reunions and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And so, where do we start? Like, when you're working with a nonprofit, or when you were working at the university, and you've got this list of donors, some have huge lists, some have small lists, and you're going to make those phone calls, you're going to start talking to people. Where do you start?
Okay, then that's a little bit of a tough question, Robin, because it depends on so many other factors of where that, where that nonprofit is. I mean, it depends on how does the community view them, what's their history, are they a young nonprofit? They were just trying to get started during this time, because that's very different than the university that's been around since 1848. Um, so it really depends. It depends on how seasoned the staff is, or if their staff turned over and all of this. Like the Ys, I do a lot with the Ys, and the Ys have sadly lost a lot of people. There were some folks that, were near retirement age that were running Ys who just said, you know what, I'm just going to step aside. This is a good time to. And so you've got new people in spots. So it depends on lots of different things. If your question is more about how do you decide who to start calling first, um, and you've got, and you've got some experience with donors, and I hope that you've been calling them all along, but you start, of course, with those folks that have been most generous and most consistent with you in the past, and reconnect with them. If you're a just starting out nonprofit, I also believe that the vocabulary we use as nonprofits is not really very helpful to us. Let's hit up Jack. He's loaded. What do you think, Jack? How does that make you feel? Or I'm seeing Bethany on the line here. Bethany, you are low hanging fruit for our nonprofit, and we're going to come pick you. I mean, seriously, friends? And just when I think some of those words have gone away, they're out there loud and clear still. So I think we have to also, as we do some of these calls, be really careful about our language. And another word that's popular in nonprofits is prospect identification. Uh, oh, okay. And I get that, and we look at, what their capacity might be, what their activities or interest is in our organization, and what their readiness might be, the big three: capacity, interest, and readiness. I get that, and I do that to a certain extent, but instead of prospect identification, I like the words shared values and interests. Because let's face it, folks, you could have a gazillionaire, but even if after talking to them, they have just no interest in what you do, you're wasting your time. And you're trying to, push a string and herd cats or whatever works for you. And instead, I really like to say who shares our values and interests. And if I can jump us to kind of another topic, Robin, that may be a part of this, but I hear a lot of times from people, oh, if only my board would help. And it's not quite as if only my board would help. Well, that's another one of those circumstances. That's another one of those oh poor me's. I want to say instead, what are you doing to help your board help? Um, and your board are not professional fundraisers. You are. You're the one sitting in that chair. So if your plumber walked in, if your plumber said to you, "Will you grab a wrench now and help me get this toilet fixed?" You'd say, "Are you kidding me? I'm not a plumber." So our board members are not professional fundraisers, but they are hopefully serving on our board because they're passionate and interested in the work that we're doing. So a better question as you start trying to see who should I be reaching out to next is to talk to the folks that already are passionate about you and say, not, can you get out a pad and pen and write down the richest people you know so we can go hit them up? What, I mean, who wants to do that? Instead, if we said, can you think a minute about why you love this organization, why you sit on this board, why you're passionate about what we're doing, and who are people that you know that share those values. Those values might be faith, they might be family, they might be a passion for helping people with disabilities, they might be pets, they might be education, but who shares those values that you believe might be excited about investing with us as well, just like you do. That's a much fairer question to ask of your board. And then as they think about those folks with you, of course, comes the next question that says, and in what way would you be most comfortable with me talking to your friend so that it goes as good as it can possibly go? Do you want to set up a call with us? Um, so Cookie is saying that there are a lot of folks on, I'm sorry, but I got distracted by the chat.
Go
Could you go
ahead.
back with that, how you work with those
Squirrel.
board members to do it? Um, and we are bringing into this, so I'm pulled into it. A bunch of us here are those board members. Oh, there you go, because our organizations don't include fundraising staff. We are doing the fundraising. And now in my case, we have new board members that we are bringing into this as part of their jobs. Agree completely. Thank you. All right. So and I get that there's some of you that the board is exactly the fundraising arm right now. So the message is still the same in that think about those people who share your values and interests. When I talk more, Cookie, about the professional fundraiser and what they bring to it, and this call today is not about writing and speaking and ask, but I have a 3-sentence formula. That's the thing that Robin shared that is probably my most popular session and what I teach and train most often in, that empowers people to easily put into words exactly what comes out of their mouth when they're going to ask for money. And that's very empowering for board members. But I do want my staff people to be crystal clear on doing it, because I think one of the biggest fears in my interviewing board members, they'll say to me, cut off my right hand, but don't make me ask for money. I get that. I get that. And so I'd like them to keep their right hands, you know, you know, and also be comfortable asking for money. Um, and Robin, I'm getting way far away from your question, but of course, the other thing that we do with board members is you've got to help them understand that you don't say, "Hi, Lauren, I'm Marcy. How about $1,000,000?" That's not how we meet and greet each other, right? That something comes before it, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but one of the best and most dramatic examples, and when I'm live, I will grab I will grab a guy out of the crowd and I'll whisper in his ear as he walks up to the front of the room with me, ask me to marry you. And I'll get a look kind of, but a lot of them will play along with me. So sometimes they get down on one knee, they're very dramatic about it. They'll take my hand and they'll say, Marcy, would you marry me? And so I look at him and I stand him up and I say, well, now here we got, we got a few things we have to kind of talk about. First off, I don't even know your last name. Second off, I mean, I've got this big old thing on my finger and I've been married 30 years. And then they'll say, well, I'm kind of married too. Well, gee, so we're both married. That's a bit of an issue. And I don't know anything about you. I don't know if you want to have kids, if you're from a faith background, if, and I, and sometimes I look at them and say, and I'm old enough to be your mother. That might play into this too. Uh, Here's my point. We can laugh at that and we can easily say that asking that question at that point in our relationship didn't make any sense. But yet we'll walk into somebody's office or home for the first time and ask them for money when we don't know any more about them than this fella did about me when he came up and asked me that in my class. So it stands to reason that we have to get to know people before and see how it's a fit for them before we ask them for money. And when board members get a chance to understand that, because sometimes we just say to them, now we're in this campaign, here's your packet of material, go out and ask for money. That's not really fair to them, because it's making them that poor guy that came up and asked me to marry him. Good, good, goodness, goodness. No wonder that's hard for board members. So, kind of, Cookie, did that help you as far as you're nodding for me? Okay. And Lauren, thank you for playing along with me. And Jack, I just love picking on you, so that's fun. So I'm kind of stopping now, Robin. You're
okay. And so let's talk a little bit about this since we're into the board now. So what would you do with the board? So you said you wouldn't hand them a packet and you wouldn't say, go out and ask for money. How how do you kind of get them to that place? Okay, so they list the names of these people who might have a shared interest, because we tend to hang around people that are somewhat like us, right? So they probably know some people that have the same interest. But so then what? I mean, what do you help the board with next to kind of relieve some of that stress and pressure on them?
Well, every single board member is different, unique, and individual, and they all have their own unique strengths. Um, I, of course, am very timid and bashful, and it's impossible for me to walk up to somebody I've never seen before and say, "Hey," right?
For some reason, I know you well enough to know that's not the truth.
For some of your board members, um, these kinds of situations are not comfortable for them. And I'm not trying to stereotype people, but I am not such a numbers person. Robin and I complement each other so well because Robin likes to dig into numbers and statistics and all that stuff. And she tries to talk all of that at me. And I try to nod and listen. And she'll get me so long. And then I'll say, "Oh, that's enough numbers, Robin." Um, and the next person might want all those details and love all those numbers. And so perhaps, and again, I don't want to stereotype, but maybe an accountant would be more comfortable working with numbers than having this kind of a conversation with somebody, or they'd be more comfortable sending a letter instead of having a face-to-face. Face-to-face interactions are the riskiest type of interactions for us. There's something called a Kolbe test, Kolbe test, Kolbe.com. I don't get any kickback for it, but if you went on and take it, it tells you your comfort level with data, with systems, with risk, and there's one more I can't think of right now. But the risk one is an interesting one for me. So to shorten this up, Robin, basically I would go board member by board member, and if you're uh, in Cookie's case, where the board are the fundraisers, whoever are your leaders in fundraising. And here I'm going to also get sidetracked by saying your fundraising lead on the board is not the person that says, "I'm not afraid to ask for money. Let me at them." No, that's not the person I had in mind. But the person that gives themselves and can say to somebody else, "Join me," because we share values and interests. So I'd go one by one around that board and find out how they're comfortable interacting with people. How do they mainly do it? And then support them with either a letter, email, Zoom call, whatever works better for them. And if at all possible, whoever is more comfortable on those face to face calls, go with them on the first call and serve as an example for them. This is the way the conversation can go. And finally, if it's your first time your board are out doing these kinds of things, make it crystal clear as you set up that appointment that you are not going to ask for money, because I think that's completely and totally rude. Until you have had a chance to get a sense of where they're at with your mission and your organization and how they feel about the things that you're doing.
Yeah,
Does that
so
help?
it does, because when we're talking about the health of our nonprofit, we started out talking about fundraising and the checkup from the neck up with ourselves, right? Getting clear on our own views on money. But now we're talking about the board and helping them get clear also, because if they have some of those same tapes about money playing, it's not going to be a healthy relationship when they go out and start talking with people. I had a boss one time, which we were on our way to meet some potential donors for lunch. The husband and wife had flown their private plane to meet us for lunch. On the way, I said to my boss, "We won't be asking for money today because this is the first time that we've ever sat down with them." 10 minutes in, he asked for $1 million. Now in the potential donor's defense, he said, "You have no right to ask me for money. You need to meet with me at least 10 times before you ask me for money." So then as we're driving back to the office, my boss said, "Oh, I thought that went really well, didn't you?"
Oh Lord.
until you ask for money.
Oh,
And so the next time I set up a meeting with this donor and his wife, I said the same thing. We won't be asking for money. And he gave it about 15 minutes that time before he asking for $1 million. And so here's what happened was that the potential donor said, I will give you money. I have some stock that's maturing, but it won't be the amount that you thought it should be. He had sold his company to Boeing. And so, I mean, he could have given us a huge gift. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about with the health of the board, right? If we have people who aren't comfortable with money at all, and then they just blurt it out, and we never did get money from that donor ever, that potential donor. He never gave us any money at all. And so I think, that's the piece of this about the board. And I know you do a lot of board training, so you work with boards a lot to help them understand, what is your role in this, and then what is the staff's role in this.
yeah. And you're also kind of, Robin, hitting on another thing right now, and that is that as development professionals, we really have to. We're in tough situations when we have either executive directors or board presidents or some board members that truly don't understand fundraising and think it's really just about being brave enough to ask. When that's when certainly I do believe in asking, and I do believe in giving a simple, thoughtful, direct ask. When you can write the ask, you can do the ask. But sometimes, and I know some of my colleagues are in situations where their ED just doesn't get it, or their board chair doesn't get it, or in my case, I worked for all kinds of deans, and then it really depends kind of on the relationship you can craft with them. And some are tough. Now, I always had a spirit with my deans where I'd say to one of them, and if you open your mouth and say that, my pointy heel is going to land in your foot, and you're going to wish you hadn't. And the other thing was, after I spoke the ask, which I'd like to do, we need to be quiet after we speak the ask. We know what we're going to say, but it's brand new for them, and you've got to respect them enough to give them a chance to think about it a little bit. You don't expect an instant answer. But there are other people, and I worked with one on this was an interesting campaign. It was for the arts. It was for a theater group in town, and the campaign was to raise $335,000, 333,000, to pay off bad debt. Now that's exciting stuff, right? And so I worked with a fellow who was a wonderful supporter of ours, owned a big hotel chain, made a big gift himself, but could just not, like the person, you could just not help himself. And I'd say, you need to let me, lead this. And okay, so I'd get to talk a little bit about the drive, and then he'd say, all right, now you heard Marcy, so what can we put you down for? and it got to the point where I had to say, I love you. I know you love this organization, but I can't go on calls with you because it's just not working well. It's not working right. And he was so hurt by that then he said to me, all right, I promise you, we're going to go on a call, and I am not going to say anything. I said, all right, we'll give it one more try. And so we went on a call, and I did most of the talking. Actually, the prospective giver did most of the talking. They should talk 70%. We should talk 30%. I would ask him some direct questions, and we agreed he would just answer the direct question. And then I presented the ask, and they said, we love CTM. We would be honored to help. And as he was there, I also mentioned his gift. I talked about his loyalty. I talked about the incredible help and support he'd been. And we walked out, and it was transformational for him. So every once in a while, you can help people understand how these things can work well. But when you are in that situation where you've got somebody who just doesn't get it and is not willing to respect that you're the development authority, and kind of marches over you in those, it's best to not take them along, because they really, not only do they hurt the cause, but for me, it's damaging for that donor relationship. And I think that each and every one of us that has anything to do with a nonprofit has to get that we are a touch in the person that we're talking to. We are a touch in their philanthropic life and their philanthropic experience. And whether or not they give to us, our touch needs to be a good one. It needs to be a positive one. It needs to not be that, oh, I remember when that organization was after money. God, was that awful. That is not how we need to show up in the world and in this profession.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a time, and not that there's anything wrong with people who've been in sales or real estate, but I was training a development director who had been in real estate, and she was used to going for that close, going for the close.
Mhm.
And so, Marcy, what we did was we came up with this signal. So I don't really touch my ears, but I would pull my ear when it was time to ask for money. And so I could tell that she was rolling up. She was getting ready to do it. She was getting ready to do it. And then she'd look at me, and it was almost like a little puppy with its tail between its legs. She would kind of sink back, and then we'd keep going. And so it was great, because when she finally learned about the right time to ask, it was just magical. I mean, I would see her running up and down the hallway with a check saying, "You can't believe it. You can't believe it. They created an endowment. They did. And so it was very
That's
cool.
exciting.
So it is. So people can change. And so sometimes if they do want to learn, spending time with them, just like you said. So one of the things you did just talk a little bit about was the leadership, the executive director, the president. And, this has been a challenging time. And so nonprofits have lost employees. They've lost their directors of development. We hear a lot of staff burnout. We hear people don't want to go back into the office, and so that staff are engaging. So, what are you helping leadership do to kind of bridge this gap?
That, that's a whole webinar in itself, Robin. But I come back to, it really does. It really does start with the mindset and the beliefs of that leader, and how that leader leads, and how, what kind of shape they're in. So depending on, sadly, their own, some have some have literally stopped. The fear associated with the pandemic, some of the things that has caused, some have literally stopped, and just shut down. I mean, just literally shut down. And you try to encourage them, to reinforce them, to reassure them, uh, to take a step, and um, to take any step, to take a step forward, a baby step, to take some action that they're comfortable taking, and then another step and another step. Uh, so I work with them around, you know, we sometimes say, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I get that. So you could do this because what's the worst that could happen? But I would rather say, if you did this, what's the best that could happen? And let's talk about that. And let's talk about how possible that is. So it's really to look at, and I know that staffing is different all over the place. In fact, my son is here right now. He works for Major League Baseball in Denver, but he's working from here in Wisconsin, home for our family reunion, because they can all be remote now. Um, and some of these changes are are not necessarily bad. They're opening us up for new ways of doing business that I think will be better for more of our donors. It's simply a question about, and here's maybe another thing that will help with this. There's times in a leader's life when every option you look at sucks. And I say, take the least sucky one, but do one, do something, right? Do something. Um, it's just a question about putting one foot forward and the next. And I know that, and I'm trying to understand that there's the fear. Um, but I do think we forget how many good things have happened in our lives. And, just another way of looking at this, even in all we went through this last year, think about what percentage of your life you've been healthy and what percentage of your life you've been sick. If you think about it, I don't think I've been sick 6 months, a total of days of 6 months in my entire life. So I'm healthy lots more than I'm sick. So chances are I'm going to be healthy. I'm happy lots more than I'm unhappy. What you focus on, you grow. What you focus on, you grow. So it's helping the people who are really stuck focusing on something that brings them to a positive place, not a negative place. And I know that some of you may be rolling your eyes and say, Marcy, that's really easy to say. How do you do it? And each situation is different, and it's talking to them about what action can you take when you're stuck. Bringing new people on, I think too, it's how do you go out and talk about it? I had a conversation around this just yesterday where someone said to me, it's a new staff person and we don't have any information down from the old staff person. So how are we going to go out and say to these donors, here's somebody new, but they don't really know anything about you and it's going to be really hard for them. And I say, without whining, oh, poor me, I don't have any of that. Instead of that, it's going out and just saying, I'm brand new to this. I'm doing the best I can. I don't have a lot of history about to rely on about your role with our organization. Would you be kind enough to tell me what brought you into working with us in the past and kind of help me come up to speed? I believe people are genuinely good and want to help if we ask them and we're transparent about our own fears and our own situation. Was that some of what you were looking for, Robin?
Exactly. And because what this helps us, since we're talking about the healthier nonprofit, and so the health of the leadership of the nonprofit, it's like putting one foot in front of the other. It's looking at asking the question, what's good? I mean, instead of what's the worst that can happen, what's the best that can happen? So I think those 2 points right there are key for, how do we as leaders, I mean, even if we don't have an executive director title or a president or CEO or whatever, we're still leaders in whatever our position is. And so when we talk about, how do we do this? How do we move forward? How do we continue when we're getting no's or we can't get people to call us back, or, we're asking for money and they're saying, not now, not now. So it comes back to what's up here, right?
Sure does. Yes.
And so, okay, so we talked a little bit about working with the board, and we talked about, asking for money. And I know that you talk a lot about major gifts, your More Major Gifts program, right?
Totally.
And so, one of the things, and like I said, there are things that I say that Marcy goes, you'll watch her twitch. So watch her twitch when I say moves management. So when people are looking at their donor database and they're saying, okay, we need to raise major gifts. Can you give us some tips on what we need to do to look at our database and know how do we raise major gifts?
And that, Robin, too, is a question that to try to answer in 3 sentences or less. Yes, I twitch at moves management. Now, Dave Dunlop was one of the people who's credited with actually having created it, and he's a coach of mine. I was blessed to have him coach me as a young fundraiser, and he never intended moves management to be something where it was. In fact, maybe I've even got it. How can I get money out of Charlie? Well, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do that, and then it was never intended to be like this manipulative sort of thing. The spirit behind Move's management was to be a tool for us as development people, so we didn't forget about donors. We didn't forget about the promises we made. We didn't forget to follow up with them and get back to them the way we said we would. That we were sure we were staying in touch in a way that was meaningful, that we were letting them know the impact their giving had, that we were letting them know the results that came from their investment, that we were keeping track of business. It was supposed to be a way to make sure we didn't screw up in all of the different people we were working with. Um, and when it's used that way, it's a productive tool. When it's used to help remind us not to disappoint the people we're working with. When it comes to raising major gifts, first off, you have to kind of define major gift, because major gift for one organization could be $1,000, for another could be 100,000, for another could be 1,000,000. And that's one way of looking at a major gift. What is a major gift defined by your organization? The other thing about major gifts is you can define it however you want, but what is a major gift for the donor? They've got their own idea of what's major for them. So my major gift might be 10,000, and another person's major gift might be 100,000. And here's just a little tip I'll give you. You asked for some tips. When I don't know where to start with a person that I feel has the capacity to be a major donor, they have given to us in the past, they've given to our annual fund. One place to start is take the amount of their annual fund gift, times it by 10, times it by 20. And that's a good place to start. So times it by 10. So generally, if you don't know where to start, you can talk to donors about a gift that's 10 to 20 times what they give the annual fund for. The other thing I think is really important is, say that say that you came into my restaurant and I said to you, "Hi, welcome to my restaurant." And let's see, who should I talk to here? Eileen is on the call. It's fun. I'm just seeing some of the folks. So I'm going to say, Eileen, tonight we're serving meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. So that's what I'll be bringing out to you. And she says, "Well, wait a minute. I'm not big on meatloaf, and don't you have like a menu?" And I say, "No, that's what we serve tonight. That's it." And that's a little bit frustrating for her because she likes my restaurant, but she's not really a meatloaf fan. Or the other side of the coin, and I plop down this book, and it's 3,000 some pages, and it says, "Welcome to my restaurant. We have selections from throughout the globe in these 3,000 pages. I'll be back to take your order." And you say, "Good night. How am I supposed to pick something out of all of this?" And we're overwhelmed, right? So another thing that's important as we try to get into that major gift work is that we have to be sure we're clear about what we're raising those dollars for, because it's not about the money. It's about what the money does, and not just does, what it really does. And let me give you an example about that. One of my clients is a private Adventist boarding school. When I started working with them 5 years ago, they were raising about $110,000 a year. This December, we just crossed $21 million. So that's quite an increase, right? And they have, and now, and they have, to Cookie's point, they have one full-time development person. And now, thanks to their consultant, they have a second full-time person to help in that development arena. And one of the things we had to get crystal clear about was what was their long-range strategic vision and what is in their operating fund, and where in their operating fund could major gifts make a difference. And we combined those two into what I call vibrant options for giving. And then those vibrant options, we kind of sorted into buckets. You know, what buckets help the students? What buckets are programs? What buckets are facilities? So that as you talk to people, you don't just say, "Give us money." That's kind of like saying, well, people like to have a choice. And not everybody, but I find the larger the gift, most of the time, the more uh, influence is not the right word. Help me, Robin. The larger the gift, the more of a role
Right, bought in. They're more bought in.
people want to have in what that money does and really does. So you need to have vibrant options for giving that you can talk to them about that helps them select something that's gets them excited and joyful about giving. And I think that's real important as you begin or grow a major gift program. And then it's simply, it's simply. Then it's about understanding that, and the literature tells us that for a new first time major gift, it's, and this is just again a generalization because you could have an experience that's different. I get that. But it takes 6 months to 2 years and 6 to 9 meaningful visits. Meaningful visits. That's not, hey Charlie, good to see you. You have a good one. Say hi to the wife. No, that's not a meaningful visit. Um, and so it takes some time. And again, not always, but in general, the larger the gift, the more conversations you have to have about it. Because you don't just say, oh, 250,000, yeah, let me pull my checkbook out and write that out to you. A lot of times you've got to think about, are you going to use stock, or are you needing to pay this over time, or how does it work? So it's so getting into that major gift world also requires a board and leadership that understand it takes some time to build that capacity and have those conversations.
And exactly. And I think that as you're talking about building that capacity, coming up with a plan. And so, again, this is one of the pieces of that I say, okay, so, we need like a case statement. And I know that that's another thing that makes Marcy twitch a little bit. And you can talk to that. But one of the reasons is because Marcy has seen people who just work on the case statement, because just the case statement's not going to raise money, right? You've got to get the case statement done, and then you've got to show it to your donors and potential donors so that then they see the case for support for your organization. And one of the things I see is that people get really clear about who they are and what they're actually raising money for when they go through the outline and start writing their case statement. So I agree with that. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up for your all's questions. And so you can either type them into the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself. But I'm going to ask this one question so you all can be thinking about what your questions are, because we've got a real treat for you in the last 15 minutes as to how we're going to wrap this up. Okay, so Marcy, let's talk about events. There's so many nonprofits that raised a lot of money with their galas prior to last year. And so now I'm still seeing them scramble. And I'll tell you, I just talked to somebody in California. She's down just outside of Los Angeles, and they are now requiring masks again indoors. And so nonprofits are now pulling back because they're afraid to have their in-person event. And so now they're kind of freaking out. So let's just talk, just overview events. What are your feelings? What do you think needs to happen?
Well, events. Events I do have kind of a love-hate relationship with. I love events as stewardship pieces, events that really say this is what we're up to, this is what we're doing. I'm not wild about ask events. And again, this kind of ties back to board members. I've had board members say, again, cut off my right hand. And really, I'm on a personal mission to keep the right hand on all our board members. But don't make me have to fill my table. I hate that. And it's like people don't want to have to do that. And so the events that have or you've got this event that is somebody's pet event and they've done it for years and it's really not working anymore and that kind of thing. So I was going to say God bless COVID, but I'm not going to say that. That's stretching it a little bit too much. But one of the silver linings of COVID is that it has given us all this remarkable opportunity to sit back and say, are we going to do it again? And are we going to do it this way? And what are we going to do with it? And it's empowered our donors to say, hey, I could participate in this if I could continue to be virtual. Whereas, it's a big drive for me to get to it or what have you, or I'm not in the same area. So if you start off by saying always, what is the goal of the event? What is the real goal of the event? And and if first and foremost the goal is to raise money, well, then we've got to step back and say, how does this work? What is the experience the event attendee has? Um, how do they feel about being invited? And then, we're all going to raise our paddles. And I understand that a lot of money is raised with all of this. And if you love your event, I mean, we work to figure out how it can be. You're putting me on the spot here a little bit because most of the time, I like to switch up those events so they really are more thanking people and recognizing and appreciating the people who support you than they are fundraising events. But it is a time to reevaluate. And I think best with a story. There's one of my clients in California, and they're called the Wooden Floor, and they help kids get through high school who are struggling but are into dance. So they're all dance people, and the whole school and they graduate. 100% of their kids go on to college. They've been around a long time. And obviously, with dance, there's a lot of in person stuff going on. So they continued this year. They went back to having their in person event. But in the meantime, they started inviting folks to come to small Zoom sessions. And on that Zoom session, they'd have a couple of their students who stood back, did a little dance. Their executive director was online. Their development officer was online. One of their board members joined in, and they would bring in small groups of donors, like 3, 4. And they did a lot of these. Did it take more time? I guess, they had to first figure out how to set it up and do it. But just look at what came out of that. More kids got to participate. The development officer is sitting right there with her executive director in these high-level donor calls. So she's getting to watch how her executive director talks to these folks. Her executive director is getting to watch how she interacts with these folks. So their comfort level in both working with them goes up. The donors feel very special because it's just 3 or 4 of them, and they were wonderful. Now they're going back to their in-person event, but they will continue to have these virtual alternatives to coming to the in-person event. They're not going away. So I believe the future holds a blend. Um, and it's my own personal preference, but I'm not quite as wild about trying to do both at once, trying to have something in person that you also are trying to live stream at the same time. That's where, in my own experiences, we've run into more problems. I'd like to have something in person, and then maybe parts of it are rebroadcast later where you can fill in with people kind of narrating some of the pieces of that event. And then that's a different way to have that event for folks that couldn't be in person. But I think the real magic to this is to just sit back and say, okay, what makes the most sense for our donors to understand everything we do, have the best interaction they can with the people we serve, and have the best experience for them. And how does that fit with what we used to do? So keep your events, but reframe them. And then, having said that, this is going to sound contrary, but there also are some of those events that are purely stewardship, that you have done forever and ever and ever. And they are this tradition. Try to keep those events that tradition, because the tradition part of it also is calming for us. It's reassuring for us. It's comforting for us that some things will stay the same.
And so, yeah, Marcy, you and I both agree on events for sure. And, because one of the things Mark said was most fundraising events don't seem to break even. why therefore continue to spend on them? And then he said yes to small groups. And so so I agree too that I'm not your event person who says, oh, a lot of times the boards will say, okay, we need to do an event, we need to do an event. It's like, no, exactly what you said. What is the reason? If we're doing it just to raise money, it's going to cause a lot less stress and a lot more time to just go out and meet with individual donors than it is to try to have an event to bring
Sure.
everybody together.
Or to that board member, excuse me, Robin, but to that board member, say, yeah, let's have an event. Let's host it at your house and let's invite about 10 people that you think share your passion and interest for this organization. We'll come and say a few things, but it'll just be a chance. There'll be no ask, but it'll be a chance for us to introduce ourselves to some of your friends. That's a great idea. Let's have that event. Let's get a look at our calendars.
That's a great idea. And, because what Cookie just said is that the current donors bring in new donors, which that's the hard part of then turning those into continuous annual donors. And I know in my experience, that's been very difficult because a lot of times the people they bring, that people give because their friend brought them, not necessarily that they buy into the mission. And so a lot of times trying to get those people to buy into the mission, sometimes it's just not going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Robin. With some of those where you bring a friend, we have to help people understand that they're bringing somebody who we think has an interest in what we're doing, and not just somebody who will feel obligated because of their friendship to give us something once. Because that's sort of, I mean, that's an old-fashioned fundraising tool. We call it bullying. And I'm not so sure that, and it works once, and there are a lot of people that raise a lot of money by saying who has the most influence and can get somebody to give. You can get people to give that way, but again, I come back to the magic of successful nonprofits is building lifelong relationships and looking at that lifetime giving value, and that comes with connecting, um, in a way that deepens their understanding of what we do, and brings them more into a state of sort of being over here to actually having donors are they have a seat at the table. They're part and parcel with our mission. Um, it's not, oh well, we've got to raise money so we can do what we want. They're really an integral part of our family.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, and so it's just like the way we started talking, looking at our view on money and being able to really grasp that and know that those people also have some views on money. Okay, so there's a couple questions here in the chat box. The time has just flown by. So a couple people are asking about your 3-sentence formula for the ask.
We should have another workshop on that because I can't teach that in 5 minutes. um, uh, let's see, what can I do? May I type in a link for them to at least get a worksheet?
Yeah,
Miss
please do.
Robin?
That works perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question and then we're going to move, that's in the chat box, and then Marcy will move into wrapping this up. While you're doing that, though, one of the things I just want to say that we're sponsored by the Bell Valley Partnership. Thank you very much, Lauren, for being here. We're also sponsored by Mountain Youth, which Michaela, I think you're here too, and also US Bank. We used to meet live at US Bank in person, and hopefully we'll be able to go back to that at some point. Okay, so Bethany's question is, what's your recommendation on the best way to reach out to donors, many who are first-time donors during COVID, as a newer staff member to try and schedule an appointment now that things have opened up? I'm responsible for raising money for our capital campaign, but do not have established relationships with our donors. Many of them also don't have a long history with the organization. Okay, so there's a double thing there. New to the organization and new donors during COVID.
My advice is to ask them, and Gail Perry calls this an advice visit. I'm not sure if she's the first one that ever did this, but I like that idea. And I would reach out to them and say, I'm new staff to this. And I want to thank you. I mean, the second I did an hour and a half talk yesterday just on stewardship, in Alaska. And we really talked about the fact that we just don't do a really good job of stewardship. And there's a difference between, and I'm drifting a bit here, Robin, between recognition and appreciation. And I don't think that donors necessarily want to be recognized. My plaque's bigger than your plaque. But I do think they want to be appreciated, and they deserve to enjoy their giving. And so I would start out by saying, I'm so appreciative of the gift you've made to our organization. I'm brand new on the staff here, and I'd be very grateful for an opportunity to sit down with you for a little bit of time and hear your advice on how I can best share our mission and our work with others. Is that something you'd be willing to do? Ask them for their advice on how we talk with others about getting involved in the organization. That would probably be my approach. Robin, what do you think?
Yeah, and one of the things that I like to do is talk to the board and ask the board who they know that, because they might already have some relationships, and then they can be the one to introduce you, maybe to go with you. And so that then it's almost like you come in with that halo over your head because they already know who these donors are. And I would also say that these donors found your organization in some way. There was something about it. And asking the question Marcy asked earlier, what is it about our organization that made you decide to give a gift? What was it about our organization that made you want to get involved? And so that's a great opening line, because they had a reason for that. And then I think that helps develop that relationship.
Yes. And if you have a board that's willing to do that, spot on. That was a great answer, Robin. Yep. Spot on.
Okay, so Marcy, I've got one last question for you, and then the special treat you're going to give us. Would you rather answer the question first or the special treat that you said you'd give us?
Are we thinking about this the same thing? Is it my advice about people love to give us money?
About the magic wand. Your magic wand.
Sure.
Magic wand.
Actually, the other thing. Oh, the magic wand. Oh. We were in a different spot. You know what I would really love is I would really be grateful if all of you would be willing to come onto your video so that we can take a picture. If you don't want to have it be in the picture, don't have your video on. But if you'd all turn on now, fix your hair, put on your lipstick. Yeah, Richard, you don't need to put on your lipstick. I get it. Well, come on for me so that we can take a picture. Robin, are you able to get us all on one screen? I can only stretch us out so far.
No, but I can use Photoshop. I'm really good with Photoshop. So here, let me do this first one.
All right. So is everybody smiling? Is everybody on that wants to get on? Wait a minute. They're still coming on. Hi, Jen.
Okay, so just keep your camera on for just a second, because I need to take two of these. So let me do that one, and then let me do this one. Okay, smile. Okay, so I got.
God, that's great. Thanks so much. Yeah, I love this. All right, now, now, are you doing another one? So you're getting everybody?
I got everybody. Yep.
Oh, you guys are great. Oh, this is great. All right, so now we've got people on. Okay. All right, so turn your cameras on.
Okay. And I think I got everybody, Marcy.
Yay! Okay. Oh, I can't wait till we can all be together again, though. Oh my gosh, this.
Okay, so
a little hug through the phone. Okay.
Okay, so the question about the magic wand, and then those of you that know Marcy and have seen her speak before know that she has a special gift that she shares with her audiences, and she's been willing to share that. So you can do whichever one you want first, Marcy, if you want to end with the magic wand, or the question about if you could wave your magic wand and bestow one piece of knowledge or wisdom on the nonprofits for good health, what would it be? Or if you want to do this piece first, your choice.
Okay. Sure. And some of you know it, and I see a lot of you on here, so you know how to do this. So I'm going to share my screen. And when we talk about all this money junk, I always say to people, people love to give me money. People love to give me money. So before you walk in on a big ask, people love to, and there are a lot of people that are like, I'm kind of uncomfortable about that. Well, think about that because we are the link to their investment in something that brings them joy. It's the great part of what we do. I believe we're called to do the work we do. And we're out there to be ambassadors of good. And so I wrote this little jingle, and I know many of you already know it. So if I can share my screen here and then come to this, share. Can you see my screen, Miss Robin?
Yes, we can
Okay,
see.
so now if I hit the button, okay, there we go. I'm going to turn it up. And you're welcome to unmute and sing along. People love to give me money to make a difference. Bum, bum, bum. People love to give me money. I'm the link to their investment. Now, the folks that know me, sing, come on. People love to give me money to make a difference. Bum, bum, bum. People love to give me money. I'm the link to their investment. One more time. People love to give me money to make a difference. Bum, bum, bum. People love to give me money. I'm the link to their investment. There we go. Yay!
Yay! Thank you, Marcy. Thank you for sharing that with us.
So I got one email once, Robin, and she said to me, Marcy, that song got stuck in my head. That's exactly what I want. I want you to walk around the rest of the day going, people love to give me money. She said, I've had the best 6 months raising money that I've ever had my entire career. If you can keep that spirit, people love to give you money. To make a difference, you're the link to their investment. So now you want me to say, what is my
right. So if you could wave your magic wand and bestow anything on the nonprofits for their health, anything on fundraisers, anything on boards, what would it be? Oh, do you really have a magic wand there? I love it.
I would want to say to you that each of you have a light within you, and I want you to share it every day. And I know that now the news and the stuff that you hear has a lot of darkness and a lot of conflict and stuff that puts our light out. But I know that each and every one of you can find the light, even if it's dim. And you know that even the smallest light can light up so many spaces around it and illuminate a clearer path for yourself and others. You are called to do this work. Inspire generosity and shine on. That would be my message to you.
Wow. Can we just like let that sink in? I feel like I've been to a yoga class or meditation to just let that sink into all of us. Because Marcy, you are such an inspiration.
Well, I really do believe, sincerely that we in this nonprofit space and we as development professionals have a unique opportunity to make more than just a difference in our nonprofit, but to really shape how we interact with each other, to really be the ones that are the change makers for our own missions, but in the world. And we can do it. We can do it. We have what it takes. We are called to do this work.
And
I
Marcy,
thank each and every one of you for the work that you're doing.
And you are a change maker by coming and being willing to do this, to talk to people. I mean, we all need to hear this, and to take time out of your schedule and away from your family. I am so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are very welcome, Robin, and you are a dear friend. And I've got to tell you, she's an incredible fundraiser and colleague, and I am so blessed that we got together in our lives. And Robin, there's one other thing that I did do, and it's always there for you, but I did put in the chat. I'm happy to do this, not during family reunion, but a little later. You can go to www.scheduleacallwithmarcy.com, and you can grab like 15 minutes on my calendar. So if there's some burning question you have, I'm happy to answer it then. But also chat in your questions, because I know that Robin and I will get to those too. Oh, Sandra, hi, good to see you, friend. You betcha. 50 people here. Dear Lord. Oh, there you are. Oh my gosh. You know, and my husband's doing all the cooking. Dear Lord. But just just never forget. And I guess I also want to leave you with one more thing, and that is what I call an I am sentence. So when I'm at kind of one of my most frustrating times, I will say, I am so frustrated with the mess that's going on here, or I am so disappointed that this person left their position. I totally reverse it. I am excited about the opportunity to restructure that position. I am a rock star today. I am a light today, and I am going to shine. What you tell yourself gets into your head, and your thoughts become your life. So be very choosy about what thoughts you put in there. And Robin, you are a gift to all of us, and I'm honored to have been part of this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Marcy, and have a great time at your reunion. The next Nonprofit Learning Series is on September the 16th, and I will send an email out so that you all know when it is and what time and all of that. So thank you all for being here and doing the good work you do. And Marcy, have a blast at your reunion.
Bye.
Bye.